Welcome to Online Tutorial 10, and today we're joined by the lovely Marcia, who's going to help us to sort of deconstruct what we've been seeing in the Interim Learning Report. How are you, Marcia?
I'm very good, thanks, Carl. How are you?
Not too bad. Maybe not as out of breath as you. You've just been for a bike ride, so you must be ready to get stuck into the day.
Just about.
Yeah, good stuff. Where you've got pretty much all the way through section 1, I'm working my way through section 2. What are the things, let's start with the positives. What are the things you've seen that you've thought people have done well?
So there have been some really interesting ideas and a few out-of-the-box ideas that they've worked through really well. They generally, for the most part, people are ticking all the boxes. So looking at those key terms that we've spoken about and discussing them in depth, and not only as it relates to their idea, but how some of the terms are not relevant to the idea. So particularly with the value chain, value shop, value network,
yep.
Which ones relate and which ones don't. Some people do that really well, where they're giving both sides of the coin.
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. What about the use of hypothetical bridges? Are you seeing that a lot?
I am seeing it not a lot. There are a few of them. Some of them, however, are not really using them correctly. It's a pie in the sky if that doesn't actually relate to anything. So if they're going to use those hypothetical bridges, they really need to justify them.
Yeah, bring in the logic. It's not just
Yes.
a sky hook to sort of hang a fanciful idea on, but to actually use it to unite the logical threads that they're working with.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what are you seeing that as I go through to get to section 2, I have to skim through section 1. So I'm noticing that there's still plenty of people who are not highlighting their terms.
Yep.
That's annoying, isn't it?
Very annoying. So when you've got to read 1,000 words in quite a short period of time, it really helps to have those key terms really pop out at you, so that you can see that they're all there at a quick glance, and then read through and see that they all have related them quite well. When they're not there, it definitely takes me longer because I'm trying to find them.
And I think it's a little bit like using why. There's the reason why we use it, but there's also the visual benefit of having used it, because you can step back from your work, you can look at a paragraph and you can say, I've got that many key terms in there, because you can see them, right? And if you've only highlighted one thing in one paragraph, chances are that should be a visual cue to you that you haven't got enough focus on the key terms happening.
Exactly. So there'll be a lot of people who will have a heading at the top of the paragraph saying cognitive and socio-political legitimacy and variation, selection and retention. But then in that paragraph, they've only got 2 of those terms highlighted, or not even in the paragraph, and they've missed 3 concepts, which are marks. They've missed marks.
Yep. What about from memory? When I was marking section 1, one of the things which was always a little bit frustrating was you got 1,000 words to play with, but people will spend way too long introducing their idea at the start and then way too long explaining their CPS statement at the end, which means they're just running out of room in the middle. Have you come across much of that?
Not a huge amount, but there are people that are still doing that. And also, in the beginning, they might have a whinge about their group, which is really not the place to be having a comment about their group. And, just really talk about what led the group to come up with that idea. How did you come up with the idea? And then go straight into and what the idea is, because some of them don't even tell you what the idea is. It's just you have to try and figure out from further along what the idea is, and then get into it.
And that's really tough to do, because if you actually don't know what the idea is, it's very hard to actually assess someone's understanding of the concepts, right? Because you don't know the context within which they're being used.
Yes. And also there's some that have ideas that are very specific to their interest, which is great, but the person reading it doesn't understand what that interest is. So you might need to explain a little bit about what that particular thing is to put the right context for the whole assessment.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. What are the other areas do you think? And this is sort of with a keeping a mind on where we're heading for the final learning report. What are some of the other issues do you think that are worth taking on board at this stage?
So some people introduce new ideas in their CPS statement.
Yep.
Yeah, ideas that weren't in the rest of the assessment, and the CPS is not a place to introduce new ideas. The CPS is really where you're highlighting your customer, the problem or the opportunity, and the solution, and relating it to the value that you're creating, not bringing in a new something.
Yeah.
So that's happened a fair few times. Ticking all the boxes. So in those highlighted terms, making sure that you've got every single one of those highlighted terms throughout your assessment, and integrating them together is also really good. If you can talk about legitimacies as part of the environment, that sort of thing is really works really well.
Yeah, and I suppose my general suggestions to people through the Zoom sessions has been, any time that you're talking about variations, you have to be talking about selection, right? Because you're hoping this idea is going to be selected for, and
yes.
Once you start talking about something being selected for, that should have you thinking about ecological environment, what's working for you for that to happen, and on it goes. So, and this is obviously more important as we head into the final learning report, because now the assessment structure starts to really gear up on that word integrated use of those terms. So we're looking for even more integration, right?
Yep, exactly.
So it's good practice to really try to force that integration into this one. And of course, if you do it and you understand the concepts, then it's pretty obvious that you understand the theory, right? Because the more you can use those terms together, the more it's obvious you actually have got a good handle on what you're talking about.
And if you use those terms more than once, highlight them more than once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I think that there needs to be in some of them some logic. For example, financial capital doesn't just fall from the sky. So realistically, how will you actually get this financial capital? There's some, unrealistic ideas about where financial capital comes from, or they might just say, "Oh, we just don't have any financial capital." Well, then the idea really can't exist if you don't either have the financial capital or see a way to getting financial capital, as an example.
Yeah, and what I always quite like is when someone's in that situation, they say, well, initially our idea was to do this, but given our lack of financial capital, be that access to resources or money, we decided we would, start smaller and do it this way. And that in itself demonstrates a really good understanding of the importance of that financial capital.
Exactly, and in the real world, businesses do that all the time, and not just with financial capital, but with the other forms of capital as well. You come up with something, and it seems great, but when you actually start looking at your resources, it's not so great, but you might see a different opportunity.
Yeah. Okay, do we want to move on to section 2?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, well, I think the main things that come out in section 2, which definitely need attention from some people in the final learning report, is there still may be 1 in 3 students, maybe 1 in 4, not using the why at all. So that makes life really, really hard to be able to demonstrate that you've got depth in your reflection. Sometimes it's just not there because people think it gets in the way, and I can imagine that you have used it, but sometimes it just clearly hasn't been used. So it's very difficult to actually achieve a good outcome if you don't use why, because the rubric isn't based on whether I think you've got a good reflection, it's based on whether you show me you can achieve depth in the reflection. So that would be the first issue. Second issue would be the use of why. Why is used to create a backward looking logic. So you state your sentence, and then having made that statement, you're then asking yourself, well, why? Why do I feel or think what I've just said? But more often than not, what tends to happen is people will then continue on from what they've just said. So they'll tell me what they're thinking. Well, I was thinking this, and it becomes a bit of a forward process. So we don't actually ever get to the. When I'm reading through the paragraph, I'm hoping the last two sentences will be purely about the student who's written them. So it's just their underlying psyche that they've got down to that lower level. And so that's the challenge, is getting the direction of the use of the why. Pretty much everybody has written a really nice structured reflection in terms of they've got all the supporting questions and things flow fairly well, but of course you've got to be using the logic backwards to get it to flow down the stairs. Otherwise you're going down the stairs, but it's almost like you're going down them in the wrong direction, so you don't get the depth that you would be aiming. So that's most probably, from my perspective, that would be the biggest area of needed improvement, is just making sure we've got the why. So I think what I might do is invite you onto a couple of the Zoom sessions that we have in the next few weeks, and we'll let people know when you're going to be on that one, and that would be my general advice to people, is obviously you can ring and have a chat to me anytime you want, but do drop in on the Zoom sessions and ask questions and listen to other people's questions, because I can sort of see the people who have tended to be attending those sessions tend to be doing a pretty good job with what I'm seeing in section 2. So I think it does help to not just assume you know, but to actually reconfirm that in your own mind.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, well listen, thank you very much for dropping in. I'm glad that we were able to get you in between the morning activity and whatever you're about to head off and do. And I'm going to get on and mark some more. So
try to catch up.
Yeah. Well, we said we always try to have a 2-week turnaround, and I'm pretty sure that come Friday evening we'll be pretty close to having them done, and that would be good because that's less than 2 weeks turnaround. So that gives everyone plenty of time. And then, as we talked about yesterday, Marcia, we're most probably going to open the submission link up so that people can submit their final learning statement, maybe up to a week or 8 days out, so that that'll help us and help everybody, I think. For those,
I think that's a great idea.
The one thing that you've noted, and I've certainly noted it as well, is we've most probably got a few students in there that have got a fairly high similarity rating coming through, and so for those of you who it looks like you may have relied upon someone else's work to create your structure, to get a sense of where you're heading, we'll definitely be in touch with you to talk about that and determine whether or not action needs to be taken. Because this is an assignment that you just do not need to use anyone's else's work as a foundation or a starting point. A normal level of similarity for this, Marcia, what would you say? Like somewhere between 0 and 4% seems to be about?
Yeah, around about that. Generally, the ones that come up high are the ones that have used the same headings, but you can see those straight away on Turnitin.
Yeah, so we're getting quite a lot that when someone's on sort of 8 or 9%, and you think, oh, that's interesting, let me look. And then, of course, you see it's all just the headings. That's fine, right?
Yeah.
But once you get someone who's up more around the 15 to 25, something like that, sadly, you start finding passages from previous assignments, which is not what we're expecting to see.
And if they're doing it correctly, I mean, there's a group that's got 8, I think, in the group from memory.
Yeah.
And they all use the same business model canvas, but every single assessment is so different.
Yeah.
On the same idea. There's barely 2 words that are the same through across 8 people.
Yeah. Yeah, and we've sort of stressed this. I mean, this is a unique assignment. It's not like in a lot of areas where you might assume that a 30% similarity is normal. 30% similarity in this assignment would be fatal. That would mean you're going to need to discuss an issue of academic misconduct to explain your situation. Now, there are definitely people who can come in quite high where they've used a standard extension form, which is
Yes.
so that sometimes throws Turnitin out of whack. But just to explain so everyone appreciates what we see, if we see 20%, it then tells us what work that's connected to. Now, if it's only an extension sheet, not a problem. Just ignore it, move on. But if it's someone's assignment from last semester, and then we look at it, and it's sentence for sentence throughout the document, then that's obviously a great problem because it's very clear. You can't, by chance, have the same sentence from 4 different paragraphs from someone's work from last semester and claim that that is your work, right? You've clearly started using someone else's work and then move things around. So we'll talk to those who are in that situation, and my suggestion to you all, don't allow that situation to be a problem for you, because there's enough crazy things going on in the world at the moment without people having to sit down in front of a academic misconduct session and explain themselves. So don't put yourself in that situation.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, thank you very much for dropping in. We'll let you go and get on with your bits and pieces, and I will continue doing what I'm doing. All the best, guys, and we'll talk to you soon.
Have an awesome day.